Me, Brandon Colonel. The next knife review that I have for you is on the Benchmade Triage. Now, this is my first ever Benchmade, and there's things about it that I like, and things about it that I really don't like. Like, really do not like at all. Now, I'll start with the good. The good is the blade. I really am impressed with this blade. It's one of my absolute favorite blade shapes. It's the sheepfoot. I don't have too many sheep's foot blades, but I've actually got two of them right here next to me. The ZT0770 CF, that is basically my favorite sheep's foot style blade. It's got a lot more of an acute tip on there, so that way you can actually do some kind of tip work with it, but at the same time, it's got a lot of belly, and it doesn't really accentuate the tip like maybe some drop points do, or Tontos. This really accentuates that tip. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about a sheep's foot that just really draws me in, and I like it a lot. Another one is my Junkyard Dog 2.2. Yeah, this is another sheep's foot blade. Basically, it's just different, and I really just like the shape of sheep's foots. But so, when I saw that this had a sheep's foot option, then instantly I just had to go for it. Another thing I like is the really smooth action. Like it, right now I've got it a little bit tighter, but yeah, it's really smooth. Before I tightened it, then I could actually just like swing it back and forth pretty easily, but it's not want to do that right now. Yeah, without too much force, then I can basically just disengage the lock and really easily go back and forth between open and close. The thumb studs are by far the easiest method. Let's see. Yeah. Inertia opening, just as well. Yeah, there's a myriad of different opening mechanisms that you can do with this knife. Let's see. Just with the how exactly should I put this? With what I've looked into with blade play in various Benchmades, with the axis lock, it's almost as if there's an inherent design flaw that puts in cosmetic vertical blade play, which is impossible to fix in a knife, no matter what you do, really. And so the up and down blade play, I can't fix that, but it's light enough that even I can overlook it, and I am not the kind of guy to overlook blade play. But this is light enough that even I can overlook it, but still know that it's there. So, I don't like that, but hey, what are you going to do? Let's see. I also really like the steel on this. It's a N680. Now, never heard of that before, so I don't really know all that well what to compare it to. But yeah, the steel on this is probably the best edge retention steel I have had to date. Let's see, my LMAX hasn't held up the same. S30V hasn't held up the same. Let's see, my Akudo Plus, which they say compares to VG10, has not held up the same. What other steels do I have? My D2 has not held up the same. S35VN has not held up the same. This is, without a doubt, the best edge retention knife I have ever had. I have not yet sharpened this after testing, and I have since used it after testing, and it still razor sharp. I mean, well, that was my fault. I mean, this is cutting better than some knives after I had just taken them off the stone. And I mean, some of the errors are my own because I'm just kind of tired. I've actually been working night maintenance lately. If you've been keeping up with my Instagram, you'd probably know that by now. But yeah, the past few days I've been doing night maintenance, and I'm actually filming this at night right now because I'll go again tomorrow night for more night maintenance. So basically, I'm just making sure to stay up a little bit longer tonight, so that way I can wake up close enough to the time that I would actually go in, so that way I'm not absolutely dead tired by the time that I go in, or halfway through I'm drifting off to sleep somewhere. But yeah, so at the very least, if maybe what I start saying doesn't make sense, it's probably because that I was actually ready to go to bed about 3 hours ago. I was already starting to drift off to sleep then. Now, what exactly was it? Oh yeah, this is without a doubt the best edge retention steel that I've had to date. But yeah, so I really, really like that. I also really do like the axis lock. It's a really cool design, but with the inherent design flaw that basically makes it almost impossible to avoid blade play, specifically the vertical blade play that you can't fix, that I'm going to have to give it a hit on. Now, I can't speak for the entire brand as a whole, because I haven't owned any other Benchmades besides this one, so I can't say for sure whether or not that truly is a thing, but I've seen enough videos of other Benchmades to say fairly conclusively that it's an epidemic among the brand, as far as the ones with the axis lock on them. Now, things that I really don't like. The ergonomics on this knife are pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. I cannot stand the ergos on this thing. It's basically like a... I was almost about to say contoured, but contoured is a very wrong word for this. It's basically like a shaped brick. That's probably the best way to put it. A shaped brick. There is no contouring. There is no chamfering. There is no beveling. The closest to beveling that they've got is right here, which makes it a little bit more comfortable for this one finger only. Every other finger, with the exception of my thumb, is incredibly uncomfortable on this knife. And using this knife for extended periods of time actually got quite painful. If it wasn't for the fact of just how sharp this thing is, because this thing is, particularly after I just get finished sharpening it, it's an absolute razor. It is one of the 3 sharpest knives I have ever owned. My number 1 sharpest being my 770. Number 2 probably it being the Kershaw Asset. And this, I don't really remember where it's stacked against the two of them, but I just remember that it's definitely among the top 3. So, if it's in between those, if it actually beats them, I actually don't remember. The one thing that I do remember is that it did not beat this. That's the one thing that I do remember for sure. But yeah, so the fact that this is so incredibly sharp is probably the only thing that saved my hand from getting blisters, because it is so freakishly uncomfortable. Now let's see. There we go. The seatbelt cutter actually works fairly well. I didn't exactly cut seatbelt or anything, but I did use it to cut paper. And while I was at work, it particularly came in handy, because quite often I would actually have to cut various sheets of paper, because being a server at Cracker Barrel, then we would have to get out these server slips, but sometimes they didn't always have them pre-cut. So taking this out was a pretty good option because I could use this to cut the sheet instead of having to whip out a massive blade to do the same job. So this is a really handy little feature here. Let's see. It is an absolute pain in the butt to sharpen. I'll give you that much. Basically, to start off with, I actually had to essentially reprofile it. Because I think that this actually starts off as a hollow grind. So when you're resharpening this thing, you essentially have to reprofile it into a flat grind. And so, shy of sending it back in and having them professionally do it, which I actually think that they don't do, you got to sharpen it yourself with some kind of a rod. And it took me absolutely forever to get a decent bevel started, and even then, it still never got back to the cutting perfection that it was at when it first started. But regardless, at the very least, it'll cut. But nowhere near the level that it was at when it first started off. It was actually incredibly sharp to begin with. Now, another thing that I absolutely hate about this knife is the carbide glass breaker. Now, for somebody who would actually use it, they probably just get over that and get used to it. But for me, digging my hand in the pocket, it was incredibly uncomfortable. Let's see, various grips that I would actually hold the knife in, again, got incredibly uncomfortable. Because sometimes, if I was going towards the back of the knife, just for whatever reason, then it would get really uncomfortable right here. And then if I was playing with the knife, just flipping it open and closed, then that glass breaker would sit right in my hand right there, and therefore put a lot of pressure, and it would get really uncomfortable to the point where I'd just have to put this thing down and go to another knife or stop using knives in general for as long as I had to. But yeah, that glass breaker got so annoying that I actually took my diamond file and I just started grinding it down until it was no longer an issue. Now, whether or not this thing is still useful, I have no idea. I have not yet tested it, and I really don't intend to because there's nothing that I have to test a glass breaker on, but at the same time, there's no reason that I have to test one in the first place, because I would for one, I'm probably not going to be carrying this thing all that much anymore, particularly since I'm done testing it, but also the fact of how uncomfortable this thing is in the hand. I'm just not going to be carrying that often. I may carry it every once in a while just for the sake of, oh, this is a really great knife, and I want to carry my Benchmade, so why not? But I'm probably going to be carrying it to a place where I'm not exactly going to have to use it all that hard. But yeah, as far as the glass breaker though, if I really need a glass breaker, I'm probably going to pull this thing. Why? Stainless steel construction. And like I said, in basically any video that this knife actually makes a debut in, this is my crap hits the fan knife. So, when crap hits the fan, this is the knife that I pull. So if I need to break glass, I'm going to pull this knife, and I'm going to use that. I'm probably not even going to have this knife on me to be able to use that stupid glass breaker, and even if I do, I'm probably not going to think about it before I've already got this in my hand, and I've already got it halfway through a window. So, yeah. No matter what happens, I'm probably not going to use that stupid thing. Let's see. The G10 on this knife is incredibly grippy. While I was at Blade, I actually got a chance to handle an Emerson, and they always compare the they always compare the G10 on an Emerson to like an emery board. Well, if that's an emery board, I don't even know what to call this, because this puts Emerson to shame with how just grating this is on your fingers. So it provides a lot of traction, and if you're bearing down on the handle, your fingers are not going anywhere, your hand isn't going anywhere. If it wasn't for the fact that if anybody pulls on this thing, you just simply want to let it go, this thing wouldn't leave your hand no matter who's gripping on it, because the traction is so great. But yeah, it actually leaves Emerson in the dust. But yeah, the overall ergonomics though, it makes you want to let go. So, as great as the traction is on this thing, the ergonomics are that poor that you just simply want to let go the moment you get it in your hands. Another thing that I'm not too big of a fan of is the grinding. It's fairly uneven. It's splotchy, like right here, here, and here. It's like a brighter white than everything else. And it looks unfinished. I'd actually have to compare it to the Spyderco Tenacious. Very budget folder with horrible grind lines on it. I could not stand that. And this is, I would actually have to say, is akin to the Spyderco Tenacious. Just very poor, very pathetic, incredibly uneven. The grinds themselves are also wavy. It's like there's a bit of a bowing. Like, which direction is it going? Okay, some places it looks like it's bowing this direction. Other places it actually looks like it's going this direction. So there's not even any consistency there. On the other side, it's at least fairly consistent, all bowing this way, but there are places where it is going straight down. So no matter where you look at this thing, it's full of inconsistencies. Now, as far as the grind itself is spot on. There's no inconsistencies anywhere. At least not that I've found. It's even on both sides, and as is evidenced in just how sharp it is, the grind is incredibly even. So, can't fault them for that. But as far as fit and finish, yeah, that's definitely taken a hit, because they could have definitely done some extra chamfering to make this thing actually comfortable. I mean, with it being a Triage, this thing is designed for being an EMT knife. So, seeing as this is a knife that they would take into the field, you'd expect it to be a little bit more ergonomic. Because somebody who's out there saving someone's life deserves to have an ergonomic tool that's actually going to fit well in their hand and fit comfortably in their hand. Not be just a cut-out brick. But yeah, so overall the knife it's actually fairly good. If the ergonomics were better, I'd say this is a terrific knife that I'd recommend to anybody. Even looking at the terrible grind lines on this thing, even taking those into account, if the ergonomics were better, I would recommend this knife to virtually everybody, because the smoothness is unparalleled. I have never before seen, at least inside of production knives, I have never before seen a knife on washers that is this smooth. I have never before seen that. And mind you, I actually, while at Blade, handled a Sebenza. Now, people can get on me about that saying, oh, the Sebenza just wasn't broken in. But it seriously did not impress me at all, the Sebenza, with how smooth it was. It wasn't really all that smooth. This is what I was more expecting, something closer to this level of smoothness. And it just didn't live up to it. For crying out loud, it didn't even live up to the smoothness of my Kershaw Emerson. This was smoother than the Sebenza. And mind you, this was smoother than the Sebenza on the Sebenza than day one. So, if this thing was smoother on day one, then that Sebenza has a long way to go before it actually can even compete on this same stage. But yeah, so outside of production knives, yeah, I've seen far smoother, quite a few, but they're all custom. But this thing is the smoothest knife that I have ever handled on washers on this side of production knives ever. I have never before seen a knife that's smoother. Now, my Junkyard Dog comes close, but it still doesn't quite beat it. Now, let's see. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Oh, the pocket clip. It has a deep carry pocket clip on it, but you still see that much, so I actually like that. It gives just enough coming out of the pocket, so that way you're not having to go fighting with a deep carry clip, but at the same time, it does hide enough that it's not some massive, massive piece of knife coming out of your pocket, which, as much as I don't mind like that much coming out of my pocket to show a knife, sometimes you do want to be a little bit more discreet, but you still don't feel like going full on deep carry like with my Browse Blade Strife. That's about as deep carry as it gets. You do not see the knife below above the pocket. But yeah, so this overall provides a fairly good balance. You don't see too much, but at the same time, there is enough real estate to grab onto. Let's see, is there anything else I want to talk about? No, I think that's actually about it. Oh, real quick, the jimping on the back is actually fairly effective, although the jimping on the front is completely useless. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So, any questions or comments, feel free to say anything below. And also make sure you guys are following me on Instagram, because I've been trying to post at least fairly semi-daily pictures of what I'm usually carrying that day. And sometimes I might even give a glimpse of a knife before it even gets reviewed, so that way you guys know what's coming. So, that's it for this review of the Benchmade Triage. As always, YouTube, stay safe.